hours, and so it's a mess, right? It's a mess, right? So Canada has made it a lot harder. So that's why, well, we're having this discussion today as sort of a different option, which isn't a great option, but it seems to be the only option.
There is something.
I don't know if we should close the door or leave the door open. I don't know. Then I don't know if you want to do like a formal little introduction. Yeah, we're having a discussion. But
yeah, we just.
My brother. No, I've tried that because in Syria they killed my brother. So I have his children. They went to Egypt.
Yeah.
To bring him to Canada.
So when you say children, how old are they? When you say children, are they minors, under 18, or they are over 18?
2 years old, 6 years old, and 14 years old.
Okay.
And mom.
Okay.
They want me to put in the bank $27,000.
Right.
I
So
have
there's a whole,
5 people,
so,
like you say.
Right.
And it takes 2 years.
If you're lucky, and if it's done properly, and if you document everything, and yeah. So again, when you say they, I don't know, like I'm not arguing with you, I'm just saying, if you're just calling Immigration Canada where there's, I don't know what, listen, a lot of people get through, right, and without lawyers or without, but the problem is, I always tell clients, like, my problem is, it's like the cancer treatment center, right? They don't see healthy people, right? So if you ask the cancer treatment doctor, right, is everybody healthy? Not people who come to the cancer treatment center, right, God forbid. So I see a distorted vision of refugee cases, right? I was telling, Kuzai, just an example of many over the years, right? I've had people who've come to me who, let's say, Afghanis who are living in Pakistan, the mother with 5 kids, no husband, whatever the story is, right? No formal UNHCR documents, but living with all the other Afghani Pakistanis in Quetta or whatever. Or the Afghanis who are in Iran for many years. So I've had people who did it through either church or Group of 5 over the years. And they waited 5 years, they thought, okay, they're a refugee, it's obvious why the woman's a refugee with 5, like they thought, well, what do I have to say, she's this. And if you can believe it or not, again, some got through, of course, but the ones that I would get, some people would call me crying, and I'd say, come in, letter, whatever, they would get some sort of letter from the embassy in whatever, in Islamabad, or whatever, Tehran, or whoever was processing, saying, right, we've processed, I've made a decision in your case, addressed to whoever, right, whoever the woman and the 5 kids, I have determined you do not meet the definition of a convention refugee because blank, 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 right, you have not demonstrated how, why you can't return to whatever, right, Kabul or whatever. So, and of course the people are like, and they'll show me, and I'll say, well, show me what you explained. And they'll show me like a 1-page letter or whatever, like not, and I'm like, you didn't connect the dots. I know it sounds crazy, right, but connecting the dots, even in Canada for refugee cases, that, now it's different, but like connecting the dots of actually, when people say, like even when I've done refugee cases here, I don't do very many anymore over the years, but, they would say, I'm afraid if I go back. And I'm like, I would say, okay, you're afraid, well, I'm afraid of bad things happening, right? So what they meant was, I'm afraid I'm gonna get tortured, arrested, assaulted, and killed, right? So I always say to them that we need to say that, right? We actually need to say to the judge in Canada what you're afraid of. The legal system is not a very nice system. The legal system is, not like social work. It's not, it really, you do have to connect the dots. So these cases where they waited 5 years, they got refused, and then I would have to tell them often at these clinics, I would tell them, there is no appeal. You have to do it all over sort of properly with or without a lawyer and document everything and connect all the dots and whatever. And I don't know what happened after, because whatever, they would be, we waited 5 years, we provided we thought it was obvious why she's a refugee, right? Yeah. So I only see those cases, right? I don't see the cases where like, oh, everything went great, like, oh, we got, the family came, right? Because nobody calls a lawyer to say, hi, it went great, can I pay you $200 or whatever, right? Like, to tell me it all went great, right? So I don't really, I have a very, a different, like I said, you ask the surgeon, is everybody healthy? No, because they're operating to remove tumors all day. Like, they're not cutting people open who are healthy, right? So, unfortunately, I have a very, so I don't know what the situation is. Like,
they have an SCR document.
So that's a good thing. So they're probably, so that's a good thing. So then the issue is, yes, whatever, like I said, putting together a properly documented package, like you're saying, showing 27,000 or whatever. I would have said something like 15, 20, 30,000, so whatever they're saying, 27,000, right? It's probably based on the low-income cutoff for the family size or whatever. And you have to have a lot more if you've seen it. They ask you for lots of things. How will you integrate them? Where will they do, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
even for that kind of situation, believe it or not, you have to really connect the dots. It's not just like a one-page letter, it's my brother's kids, which would seem obvious to you and to me, but it's not so obvious to a bureaucrat necessarily, depending on that bureaucrat. Why? Because they see so many cases, right? And they have to make a decision. Who gets in and who doesn't, and that's, you know, that's the unfortunate process, right? Yeah.
So
That's not a good answer for you, obviously, in your family, and then, no, that's the answer.
Mennonite church.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if the person's Muslim, they call it church sponsorship, yeah, they call it actually SAH, what they call it, sponsorship agreement holder or whatever, but their church is usually, but yeah. And again, the problem is they have so many people knocking on the door, right? So again, they can't help, they're gonna help 10 families, not the 10,000, right, or something that, you know, that's the problem too. So it's a lot of it, and I'm saying, you know, a lot of it is how things get sold, and it shouldn't be about marketing, it shouldn't be about Twitter campaigns, right, or whatever, but really it is very, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, right? You're not gonna, like I said, you're not gonna go pay a mechanic to check out your car that's not having a problem necessarily, unless you're having an oil change, right? You're not gonna say, all the wheels are running properly, but can I pay you $60 to right? You're gonna go because you say, listen, you see, you hear that oil, right? That's how the government works, that's how bureaucracy works to some extent. Whether you like it or not, and it doesn't, sometimes it can backfire, yes, but I mean, as I tell people, if it's already bad, how much worse can it get, right? Like they say, if you have Revenue Canada sending you 100 letters and then you say, well, should I go to an accountant to maybe write a letter back? And then if you say, yeah, you should, because what else can you do? But then if the person says, oh, like I'm afraid it's going to make it worse, I'm like, how much worse can it get? You've got 100 letters coming from Revenue Canada, right? Like it can't get any worse, right? So sometimes you have to push back because there are no other options, right? Like do nothing, which is an option, right? And hope for the best, which is an option. You know, pray, that's an option. I mean, you know, but I'm not, you know, I'm like, whatever, some people choose that, right? And that's, you know, but I mean, I'm not in the business of praying, meaning for my clients, right? In the sense I tell people always you can hope for the best, right? And that's a personal, whatever, religion, whatever, right? But that's unfortunately not my business, right? My business is not for selling people like, you know, like meaning just pray, right? Because I'm a lawyer, right? I deal with the legal system, which, you know, is not so spiritual. Even though you swear on the Bible or the Quran or whatever, it's not so spiritual, you know, the legal system. It's not so, yeah, you know, so.
So how should the meeting go then?
Yeah, so I don't know. Like what I mean is, honestly, I've done enough talk. Like you know, I don't know. So however you want to, really, because maybe Atom can, you know, I don't know. However you want to do it, in the sense, I don't want it to be totally disorganized in the sense. But this is what maybe I can, if we sort of have kind of everybody here, and I can sort of maybe do like, I mean, you know, people that, I sent a text to somebody else too that you may or may not know. She had a meeting at 4:30, but she may or may not come, so I just, you know, she'll be late, but.
Yeah, there's some of them there in the way right now. So,
no problem,
yeah.
no problem. I mean, I can talk to them, you know, because yeah. I mean, so basically, my name is Silvia Valdmen. I'm an immigration lawyer. I've actually practiced for 15 years in Ottawa, but now I'm fairly virtual in the sense that I technically have my main office in Toronto, which is, like I get my mail there, whatever, Law Society. But I actually live in Niagara, but I come to Ottawa sort of every month, and a lot of my work is done by email, Skype, whatever, whether clients are in Canada or outside. Really, to some extent, I don't need to see people often, right? I mean, seeing people is a good thing, but most things are by paper and whatever. So, I mean, I've practiced for many years, and most recently, you know, I do have, a lot of Syrian or, you know, Palestinian clients, and over the last few years since all the situation has started, you know, a lot of them have asked me, you know, is there anything that we can do to sponsor the discussion that we've just had, right? Group of 5, you know, whatever the things that are happening. So, like I said, I mean, the unfortunate answer has generally been, right, unless there's a specific category, generally speaking, like orphan nieces and nephew, that could be, unless they have UNHCR documentation, you know, doing a group of 5 or finding a church or and all of that sort of stuff. In general, there really isn't like a special category that the government has created in the sense, there really hasn't been, except for what you can Google and see on the Immigration Canada website. They put a lot of sort of political announcements, as I call it, right? Helping Iraqi refugees, helping Syrian refugees, but no real, what I would call, targeted sort of program like the government did when the Haiti earthquake happened a few years ago, and I had done some files for people who had like parents or sisters or nephews or whatever it was. So they actually literally, like the government in that case, created like an actual special processing center, special form, like whatever it was, to process those files, a little bit with the Philippine, not tsunami, whatever, my brain is tired, whatever, there was some sort of like a tidal wave, or what do you call it, typhoon. There was sort of a little bit of a special program to kind of accelerate applications. Yeah, no, that's okay, have a seat. Yeah, so they haven't really done that for the Syrian, situation. I mean, so then the why I don't know, meaning I don't speak with the government, right? So all you can do is kind of guess, and you can say either, I mean, is it religious? I don't know, I don't think so, meaning, anti-Muslim or something like that. I don't think so. Is it because they just don't want to do anything? Maybe. Is it because they don't know what to do because there's so many people affected and families in Canada? That could be an answer. Lack of political will, which we were saying that a lot of it because the Syrian community is not perhaps as organized, or Syrian Palestinian is not like as organized as the Haitian community or as the Filipino community, or is not as established. That's probably part of it. So in terms of dissecting it, that's been sort of the discussion over the last while, up until more recently. And of course, as we were saying earlier, that when things first started unraveling, I guess you can't see forward, right? You don't say like, oh, in 4 or 5 years it's going to be worse, or or the same, or whatever you want to call it, and affecting family personally, right? It's easy to look back and say, oh, why didn't we do anything in year 1 and year 2, right? You're saying it's too late. So this discussion kind of came, I don't even know how it came, but like I said, of many sort of clients, former clients, etc., asking me, and I mean, really, it's not like this category. Answer them. I know they don't meet the definition, so you're already saying, like, here's all the forms, for example. I know I don't meet the definition, or they don't meet the definition of a family member, as an example, but I'm asking them to be exempted from the requirement to meet the definition under humanitarian compassionate grounds. So that's sort of in plain language. Then the issue is, how can you say and what do you say are the humanitarian compassionate grounds in a particular case? So this type of application, as we say as lawyers, and these are the kind of applications that over the years, new lawyers, what we call, is sink their teeth into, because there's really no one rule. There's guidance. So the kinds of things you would think that I put in the notes, whoever looked at, the kinds of things that you would think are relevant, like, who are you as the Canadians or permanent residents, meaning, are you working? If you're on welfare, not such a good idea for obvious reasons. I'm not judging people who need social assistance, if there's anybody in the room, but not such a good profile for kind of obvious reasons, I would think, right? Do you own a home? Do you rent? Doesn't matter so much, right? What is your income? Do you make 18,000 or do you make 50, 60, 70, 80, or something that can kind of be, again, for the Canadian lifestyle, that you know what it costs to live here, right? So if you say to somebody, I earn 15,000, I have 5 children and a wife, and I want to bring my, my 3 nephews and nieces and a wife here, the government would say, how is the math going to work out? Because the average family needs 40 or 50,000 just to sort of have, the base. So those kinds of things, right? And then so you put pretty much in these type of applications, whether it's this situation or any, really anything and everything, because there isn't one rule. There isn't really like a check mark of like, yes, yes, yes. They look at everything. They look at the family here or whatever the type of file it is, and they would look at the situation overseas. The kind of situation there is, we know it's sort of like it's refugee. The one thing, again, the government keeps making it harder and harder. They've changed over the last several years this whole issue of humanitarian and compassionate requests, that they cannot be a refugee request. So what that means is, like, this is where the lawyer brain has to come in, not only a lawyer brain, but basically in this situation as an example. So I'm not going to differentiate between Palestinian or like Syrians. So like somebody's there, let's say in Syria, with the situation. A humanitarian application as a sponsorship type of case could not say, they are a refugee. Like what I mean is overtly trying to fit the situation, and this is a little bit of like mental gymnastics, because the humanitarian compassionate rules sort of say, well, it doesn't apply, if somebody's a refugee, they can't really fit in this category. The humanitarian compassionate is that it's bad, but it can't be that they're a refugee. So I'm not, so you know, again, there's ways to sort of like present the situation, right? Again, under that terminology, that the reason you want to bring them is because you're settled and you have a decent life here. They're your family members, whatever the family is, niece, nephew, uncle, brother, sister. It's really bad there, and whatever people would want to label refugee, that technically speaking, you're not saying that they are a convention refugee under the definition, that they're not necessarily being politically targeted or religiously targeted, or whatever the sort of definition of convention refugee would be. But you're saying the obvious again, right? It's really bad there for them because, and again,
they're living in a war zone.
Right, and you would say more, and again, use an example, you would say it would have to be more than just it's bad. So again, I don't want to be disrespectful, right? Because it's bad for everybody. And so you need to kind of still, again, this is something that would take hours to kind of come up with like the nuances for every individual case, right? So I mean, you know, an example might be in that case, right? It's especially bad for my sister with her 3 children because she's now lost her husband. And in that environment, when you don't have male protection, it's especially bad, or whatever, right? It's especially bad because my sister was a pharmacist. They are targeting people in the medical profession for helping or allegedly helping whatever, right? It's particularly bad for my sister because 20 years ago at university, and this is an extreme example, right? She was very pro-Israel or whatever, and people kind of knew about it, but back then nobody said anything, but now it's really bad because, you know, because whatever, right? So just like, it sort of needs to be kind of nuanced, right? More than just, and you know, and in a way, I feel bad that that's the way it has to be, but that's the way it has to be. Meaning, to say that it's bad, it's a war zone, like whatever, like that it doesn't particularize it enough the way the law kind of wants to see it, sort of thing. So that's my. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know, everything else, I mean, can be how you want. People can ask general questions, people can, you know, so yeah.
So part of the problem is us, Syria, because we have no leverage.
Right, so we're saying this,
The problem is that we are defragmented and so bad.
Okay, so you mean here, or
not only not happening, I used to be the president of the Syrian Association.
Okay.
That years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and people are split, some with the regime, someone against the regime.
Okay, so I mean that's a,
and the government knows it.
Okay.
And they do not take any way. Look
so
at the Ukrainian, what happened with the
Canadian government? Sorry, so I'm just
yes, the Canadian government. I know, I see members of parliament, I know they know everything. And look at the Ukrainian of what happened.
Right.
How the government is fast.
Right. That's another example.
They have association, they know what they want.
Right. So that's
instead of focusing on this, the technicality of bringing someone, because I went through it and you're absolutely right. I know how complicated it is. We should focus like in October of this year, 19th of October, there will be federal elections.
Right. So we're saying imminently,
What we should focus on, all of us here. How to have leverage.
Right, so that's exactly
what we need to do.
and I would agree. I mean, that's
whether it's a Facebook page, whether I contacted, I can show you letters I've sent to member of
I'm sure, I didn't know your background, but you're
what they will send you, I give you back, I can show you the reply. The so-and-so is aware of your points, thank you very much, and we are looking forward to help all the refugees everywhere. It's
Right, we know that, but I mean, again, so you either stop with that, right, or, and like I said, I'm not saying I'm an expert in political, you know, I'm not a political animal at all, actually. I'm not a part of any political party, actually. So my answer to you is that is like anything, you can either stop with that, right, or, you know, you regroup and you figure out how you reply, and then they'll reply back, and you know, and so again, it is a little bit like who's going to be the last one on the train track when the train comes, because that is the game of politics, right? So I'm not, but bringing it back to trying to help family, you're right, there's the element, that's what I was saying, there's an element of you either wait and just do the political and you wait for some sort of announcement and then everybody, right? Or you're a little bit, what I'm suggesting with this type of approach, I'm not saying people have to sign up today or ever, whatever, this type of approach basically takes the control to some extent in your case, right? It shifts it, right? So it's like saying, are you on the defensive or are you on the offensive? So you ask 10 lawyers, you probably get 20 different opinions. But my belief is always, depending on the situation, in this situation, I would think that being in the offensive in an application mixed in with political pressure would be a good thing rather than political pressure, hoping for the best, hoping that they come up with some eventual policy that can, never come up, and then apply is what I'm like. So I don't know if we're going to discussion. Yeah.
He wants 25 letters from my writing.
Okay.
To raise this question, hold on.
Okay.
Raise this question to the government
question
in the
period. Right. So we're saying question period. Yeah.
He needs
yeah.
25. I could not get 25.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Oi. Or I would say, oy vey is what I would say. Why couldn't you get 25 signatures? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah. So we can discuss. I mean, that's I don't know what to say to that, but yes.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of,
sure.
of the presentation.
Sure.
I have a question about what is the size of, what's the volume of the government, this compassionate ground, how many people usually...
Right, so that's a good question. There are no statistics. so that, again, there are no statistics on these kinds of applications. Why? Because they're relatively low priority. They are. Again, the way you make them higher priority is sort of bring the political kind of pressure on to some extent, right? Yeah. Public media, Facebook, Twitter, question period, upcoming election, town hall meetings, so there's not one answer, right? I mean, like law, politics is a little bit the same thing. You kind of throw everything out there and you see what sticks, right? I mean, it's not like you go, for sure. I mean, we were having this, just, my general comments on the Arab Spring. If you Google on YouTube, right, the political experts on CNN and all of them, right, whatever it is, Al Jazeera, right, the political experts on the Arab Spring, right, if you were to look at them and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars on these think tanks in Washington or whatever, right, and if you look at some of the guys who were like, yeah, it's an Arab Spring, it's great. So again, I'm not going to get into politics here, but if you're a person who's like secular in Egypt who wanted to see a secular government or whatever, you're not so happy about the Arab Spring, right? You're like, they got it totally wrong, right? So I mean, politics and it's law. It's sort of like you kind of because you don't know what's going to work. You really don't know. The unknown is the outcome. The known. But I know as a practicing lawyer for 15 years that talks to many colleagues who are, whatever, the big shots, not the big shots, I know the big shots, whatever, Green and Spiegel, Lauren Waldman, Barb Jackman, these names may not mean anything to you, but me as a practicing lawyer, they're like the big guys. I've worked with Lauren Waldman on a case, if they're telling you the truth, they will tell you low chances of success. But if you don't try, there's zero chance of success, and I've had success. Most of my H&Cs in different situations have worked, but some haven't. But but I don't really keep statistics because they're kind of irrelevant, right? Like federal court work, it's low chance of success, but I have higher than average because I don't necessarily take all cases. I tell people, listen, your case is, in my opinion, nothing, and they don't waste their money or they go to another lawyer. So my success rates are higher. Most of the good lawyers who don't take every single case will have higher success rates than what they know the average success rate is. But I would say literally probably less than 10%, right? If you were to put like a number on it, and it's a very random number, but there are no public statistics. There are probably statistics theoretically buried in the government reports because probably they have them in their annual reports of, we received 10,000 humanitarian applications and we approved buried somewhere. If they still publish, they're publishing less of that.
Yeah, and
so there's no official statistics.
A few years back
yeah, it's like in 2010, which doesn't reflect these kind of cases, right? They're like failed refugee in Canada, they're not the same kind of situation, right? Very bad facts, like, the criminal who was caught with, drug dealing but is from Somalia or whatever, like bad facts that you can't compare, right? So it's sort of like comparing apples and oranges. Even if I said it's 20% statistics of approval, it doesn't capture the specifics, right? So it's very frustrating because you don't know.
That's fine. And my second and last question is that the decision with regard to humanitarian compassionate ground, is it something that is hired in the minister's level, or it's bureaucrats?
It's bureaucrats. It's still the level of a visa officer. Yeah, it's still the level of a visa officer, and essentially, yeah, it would, like I said, and this is what I was saying. So, like, essentially, the only way I see it based on today and based on the facts would be to do it sort of like as there should be a family connection in almost all cases, like my brother, my uncle, my niece, not like a friend, even though you're right. So there should be a family connection that could be at least proven through declarations if there's no birth records that could, whatever, because of the situation. And it could be, like I said, it's a sponsorship, which would still technically, whether or not you go through Mississauga, probably, almost certainly it would be refused at Mississauga as a sponsorship because we already know it's not a formal family class. Because if you are, then you would do it as that and still, right? But then it would go to the visa office for decision because in the forms it says if you're not approved as a sponsor, do you want your rest of your money back after $75, or do you want to go to the visa office? Well, you would say go to the visa office because it's a visa officer that legally has the jurisdiction to make a decision. But no, it's not a higher up minister at that. It's a visa officer. It might go to a manager because they see if it's with a lawyer's letter. If it, they probably see they're not apolitical even at the visa offices, even though they're not politicians. They don't like negative media attention. In fact, buried in some of these manuals that are now hidden online that used to be easier to find as a lawyer, there are references buried in there, not in this case. They actually say, right, if this is getting media attention, send an email to national headquarters, right? They don't want negative attention, right? In general, they don't. So, because they don't. If you remember, there was that case with that Somali Canadian who was being denied a passport. So the lawyer who did that in Toronto, I know him, I'm blanking on his name. Oh my God, I'm totally blanking on his name. Anyway, right, he used the media, whatever, and then he so finally got him approved, right? But that they did not want that negative attention to some extent, right? Because they don't want the especially now with an election coming, right? They wouldn't now. It's sort of too late for an election thing because in some ways it should have, these types of applications, it would have been good if they were in the process a year and a half to some extent, let's say, right? But yeah, in general, it's a visa officer or maybe a regional manager, officer. It won't be a minister, it won't be here in Ottawa, it would be at the visa post level in general, but I mean, that's, yeah.
So that means that there is no quota for them. Like, it's not that one.
Right, so there's no real quota, right, except for if they get 20, 30, 40, 50 applications that are very similar, right? It's going to be obvious that like, oh, this is like some sort of, so they're not stupid. They would be like, oh, there's like 50 files that are, similar cover letters, not the same facts, but similar, cover letter submissions, so, but I don't know what they would do internally. Like I said, my guess is they would probably contact headquarters. They're not perfect either. If there was, oh my God, it's getting questions in question period. Oh, this is coming up on Twitter. They're not totally able. Why does Immigration Canada have a Twitter account? I mean, why do they have like Facebook stuff, right? They're not totally, immune to this stuff. They're aware that people now are sharing much more information than they ever could before the age of Facebook and Twitter, and stuff they could keep really hidden is harder to keep hidden these days, right? So they're not completely unaware of that, right? But how they deal with it, can't tell you, but they're not unaware of it, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We know for sure that there is no political will for the government to bring any refugees, and this is obvious.
Or at least not sort of like they're bringing who they want and whatever, but they're not like sort of asking what family, who can we help.
When you don't want to do something, you put all kinds of rules in front of
exactly,
so
exactly.
Now, apparently our option is very limited. You are saying that even with this approach, first of all, this is our only option we have.
It would appear so. I mean, it would appear so as of today. I mean, from what I know.
The problem is. Most of our families lived years now living outside. It's very difficult to.
And in what kind of places? When you say living, where are they living? Turkey,
all
Lebanon?
All over the place.
I don't know.
Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon,
okay.
Brazil, Venezuela.
I was actually just looking. Bolivia is
all over. Some in Africa. So it's
even some in Haiti. Actually, there's a community of Palestinian and Syrians living in Haiti, and
we occupy the world eventually.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean the thing is, what you are saying is that really doesn't give us any hope on this. I have five brothers and sisters scattered around the world, and none of them will have like this. extra, like catastrophic.
Right. So they're not presently in there.
Exactly,
Right.
but they are all refugees looking at me and hoping that I can help them somehow.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they keep coming for me with examples saying, "Oh, this people actually immigrate."
Right. I know. Everybody has the
Get
story
accepted.
of Everybody has the story of the neighbor, of the friend.
As a lawyer, are you aware of this actually backdoors that the government is bringing refugees?
Right.
Because this is really driving me crazy.
Right.
Every time they send, those people are accepted as refugees to Canada.
Right. So the answer is I don't know. Right. I mean, I don't have some secret email or whatever. Listen, everybody's gonna have the story, right? It's like me, the lawyer who's making $1 million and I'm not making $1 million. They claim they're making $1 million or whatever as an immigration lawyer. So I'm not trying to make light of that. Everybody's gonna have that story. I mean, my legal answer and my rational answer is I have no comment because I don't know what the facts are. I don't know if it's true, okay? I mean, I don't want to lie. People in lots of communities, including Romania and my own, that I'm very disconnected from because I left when I was 2 months old, everybody has that story, right? And then you find out it's actually not true. Everybody's got the brother, the sister who helped them, and then you find out, no, actually it's not true. They made it up because they didn't want to be embarrassed or whatever. So I'm not trying to, that's not a good answer for you, for your brothers and sisters. But there is no official back door. Like I said, some people do get through somehow, whether they're waiting at the embassy for 12 hours a day and they get lucky and they get chosen for whatever. So there are those stories, but like I said, I'm never going to hear about them except through you because those people are never going to call me, right? They're never going to call me and contact me and say, right, my brother got through, I want to talk to you, right? So I don't know of any back door.
I'm not expecting an answer.
No, exactly. No, I don't have any. But I hear all those kinds of stories all the time.
Now, my other question is, this is maybe an individual option that anyone may take to go through this route, which is that the rate of success is maybe very low.
Whatever, 5–10%.
What other option do we have as a community, like political pressure coming
so like we said, so politically, I mean, again, organizing and however that happens, I mean, and politically trying to pressure them to create a special category doesn't mean they've stopped helping the ones that they're announcing that they're helping, right? Like whatever, I mean, not saying that those people are less deserving, but let's say randomly, relatively speaking, because it is relatively random, because everybody's generally in a bad situation. I mean, everybody who's, whether left or there. But yeah, political pressure to basically literally create a special category like they did for Haiti of, again, the connection is family members in Canada. So is that special treatment? Yes and no. Like I said at the beginning, if you heard me, immigration in any country almost that has an immigration policy, which is generally the West or whatever, right? It's always based, in fact, even non-West, right? If you're Thailand, because I have a client who's Iranian living in Qatar, maybe marrying a Thai lady. I mean, Thailand has its own process for, if you're married to a Thai woman, she can sponsor you, right? It's related usually to family or economic, whatever, right? And so it's not about special treatment. You're saying we are Canadians or permanent residents, mostly Canadians, right? We have jobs, we're not rich, but we're not, we're not on welfare. We can, explain the situation, and document it, right? Why can't we, quote unquote, sponsor 5–10 years, that the only thing that they would be entitled to would be like an OPIP card, right? Meaning they're not going to go on welfare, we swear, and if they do, you're going to application, you paid the fee. Oh, okay, 30 days later, this is what has to happen, and if it does it like that, that's just how our system works. You pay $550, you pay for the $150 for children, right? You do an application. Legally, you are entitled to what's called due process, meaning you're not entitled to the results you want, right? But legally you are. Talking about it with MPs about creating a program, you're entitled to nothing. I mean, you're entitled to nothing legally speaking. Politically, it's a different story. Yeah.
Now, the last question: if whatever option we talk on this, if the situation in Syria change,
right?
Hopefully, and something happens because we don't know.
Yeah.
The application set may change, like the consideration of the application may change.
Right. So my question as a lawyer is, what do you mean by change? First of all, is it for the better? Is it for the worst? Is it and as legally you would say, is the change substantive and stable? So change for a month, and then
a change of regime, and there is a new government, and hopefully things start to.
Yeah. So the facts at the time any application is considered are what matters. So yeah, so there are many unknowns that so if it gets to be paradise on earth in a year and a half and the application is 6 months away from a decision, yeah, it's probably going to be refused, again, unless you can update it and say, even though it's paradise for all those people, it's still not paradise for my family, because that is possible too, right?
So
if the current government is anti, whatever that you're, I mean, so, and that happens. I've had Nepal is another example, Nepalese clients who've had different similar situations where there was a government and then about 6 months later it was toppled, and in the middle of that they're doing a refugee claim. So that is a relevant issue. It's a good question. All I can say is you just deal with it as it comes, and you either, you deal with it if the client still says it's still bad for me. I've had refugee clients in the middle of that from Nepal. All of a sudden it's a great government, and at the hearing they had to answer that, so we had to prepare for that. We hope for the best. So tell me, there's a new government, tell me why it's still unsafe for you. And then the person would answer, right? Well, yes, a new government, but it's not stable. It's a new government, but it's made up of half of the people who are the bad people, right? Because that's what happens, right? Just like in Colombia, right? All of a sudden, the FARC, who were like killing people and taking their farms and shooting them, and oh, they're part of the government, so they're great. So a lot of the Colombian clients were like, are you crazy? Yeah, that's political and that's great, but like on the ground, it is still not good in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, So, again, it will depend on the full facts of the case, right? Exactly. But that's a good question, right?
The case we are working on, you mentioned a few times that you can, it can be on the parliament and the question period. How would we bring this to that parliament?
Right, so my response to that, first of all, would be like, they don't care too much about lawyers. I mean, in some ways, because they care about their constituents, and that's you. Everybody's a vote, right? Everybody's over 18, not in prison, although I think prisoners now have the right to vote. So they don't care as much as about me. I mean, and I'm not saying only me. I'd probably have to like get some help from colleagues and friends and people that I know from my network in the sense. But you would have. I mean, Adam is very good at the social media stuff, and Kuzai, and what, like this gentleman is this. So there's not just me, but it would not be. All I meant by that was that you'd have to, like, as I said, kind of throw everything out there, right? And yes, you have to have a plan, like anything. If you want to buy a house, you need a down payment. You got to start saving, right? So we'd have to have kind of whatever you want to, I mean, now social media or a discussion through email or through whatever, and have 1 or 2 or 3 lead people that probably, come up with the list, right? So yeah, who's going to update Facebook twice a day, or who's going to do a Twitter feed to all the MPs? I just sent Adam I was looking for something else. There's like a list of MPs who have Twitter accounts as an example. I mean, and I'm sure you could have found that too or whatever. But so in a way it's unlimited. But when you brainstorm for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, you realize there's like 10 things we really need to do, right? Every day, every week, we gotta figure out what's the way to get a question in question period. And I'm embarrassed to say, I don't remember. I did this stuff in law school, and I actually don't remember. I volunteered on Parliament Hill for years for the Liberal whatever, an MP. I can't remember, but there's a way, you have to, the ways of the government as an example, right? Yeah.
Pressuring the government
in all the ways, and I'm saying in all the ways.
It's something not guaranteed. It might happen.
Of course not. It's called the political machine, which is
So they might ask the question, or they might not ask that question.
Right.
The question period. So that's something.
But like I said earlier, if you were here, I mean, the truth of the matter is, anybody, you don't have to be a lawyer, or I said I'm not a political animal, right? If you just experience the news and the media and whatever, right? Just as an example, that's nothing to do with this, right? All the stuff that's been ongoing, thank you, all this, of course, bad stuff all the stuff that's been ongoing with the Liberal Party of Ontario, and so there was some stuff with, the education curriculum, what they're teaching children. I don't have children, but it's like whatever, if you're like sexual, I don't know, whatever they're, So again, right, if that was just left alone, but I mean, it seems to keep like certain media outlets keep asking those questions, keep doing stories on it. They keep being asked in Toronto, where the provincial, parliament sits, or, and so, they can ignore those questions, but again, there's the political backfire. The ones who are on your side, don't care. But the more you get asked the question, the more you ignore it and don't answer. And again, it's not like you can control that. The more that there can be a negative outcome. So in the case of Syrian families and Palestinian, as an example, right? I would say, I haven't done a poll, but I would say if presented through media outlets, if you apply as 20, 25, 30 families, right? There's profiles of people that are dentists, that are, you know, a teacher, or, you know, orphan children with, like, whatever the profiles are, right? In and outside of, could be, they're in, you know, Brazil or whatever. It still doesn't mean it's a great thing, because that's a temporary solution, right? They're not citizens of Brazil, and, you know, and they've left their homes still, and they're away from family who can help them, whatever. So, I mean, basically, you know, all that kind of stuff. Where's it go? The comment. Yeah, I would say that I would say that generally the Canadian public, whether you're Syrian or not or whatever, would be empathetic to that, right? I mean, there is a little bit of how you spin things, right? They talk about spin, how you do the political spin, right? Meaning, you know, most Canadians are very humanitarian based, right? Even, you know, white Canadians, right, who have no connection to immigrants, right? Most do now because, you know, whether somebody's married to an immigrant or whatever, right, helping somebody at the church or mosque or whatever. So I would say that, in fact, that there's a lot of political pressure to be put on politicians, not only through you, but people who would hear the story when it's, you know, on social media, Twitter feeds, whatever it is, WhatsApp, and as it spreads a little bit like a cancer, right, or whatever, like YouTube thing, whatever little video that you do. And so, I think the Canadian public would say, yeah, why are they being treated differently? Why did you do a special program for Haitians? Why are you letting Canadians and their families kind of just rot wherever? And like, so what I mean is, like, there could be a negative, right? But I think that when most people on the street, if you told them the story of what you want, and you're not asking for free handouts from the government, you're not saying let them come here, go on welfare or whatever, right? So I would think most Canadians, like I said, would be like, yeah, where do I sign up? Where do I write my MP, right? So, so I think, yeah, some might not. Some might be anti-immigrant, whatever, right? Anti-Palestinian, but like, whatever it is, right? But you can't control that necessarily, except by putting it out there, right? And either changing people's minds or not, right? But there's not much you can do about that, except it is what it is, right? But, so that's what I mean by the whole, like, it's not like I can control it all or you can, but I think that when I look at this, it's not about my self-gain or as I'm a lawyer or making money or whatever it is, that if you were to talk to a normal Canadian on the street, and if you told the story like that, right, there are many, many Syrian Canadian families, Palestinian families who have family members who are in very bad situation, you know, in and outside of Syria because of the situation, because of the government rules and whatever changing, and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees basically being practically useless in my opinion. But anyway, you know, and if you were to say they've presented plans of settlement, they're not rich but they're not poor, they want to help them, you know, 5, 6, 7 family members, whatever, you know, we're not talking about bringing 100 family members, right, and having them all live in your 3-bedroom house or whatever, right? So if the plan is reasonable and you were to ask a Canadian, like, what do you think about this? Would you write to your MP, or what do you think it's fair or not fair? I think many Canadians would say, what's the downside, right? Especially if some are, whatever, teacher, hard worker, construction worker, dentist, whatever, you know, what's the downside in 3 to 5 years, and if they have children of their own in the next generation, they'll be, obviously, you know, God willing, taxpayers, you know, good people, right, whatever, they'll marry, they'll have kids, they'll buy houses, all that, there's, right, and so, yeah, that's what I mean. Can I guarantee that all that would happen? No, right, of course, but when you make things human, and when you know, like I said, when it's not just about statistics, because if you look at this stuff, right, 3 million people affected, 300,000 displaced or whatever, like in a way those numbers mean nothing, right, because you go, oh, 300,000 people. I don't, right? But when it's a story, right, and not to sound, when it's not, it's a story as in made up, right, but when it's like real live people, right, that's different than statistics. Statistics are like, you know, 1 million refugees, you know, I mean, you just, so.
Question about the group of 5. A group of 5 can sponsor a family, right?
You can sponsor, yeah, individual or like a family.
Okay,
so
one of the 5 will be the main sponsor, correct?
Oh yeah, like there's sort of like you mean the group of 5? Yeah, it's like there's like a, who's the lead person or who's the contact person? Yes, yeah, in the forums. Yeah.
But the group of 5, let's say we are 5 here. Okay, so the first one here will sponsor a family, and he's the main sponsor. And then at the same time, can the second person can be the main sponsor and also sponsor another family
Okay, so
with the
first of
same
all,
group?
right, so my idea is not necessarily a group of 5, right? Because remember, I don't know if you were here, group of 5 sponsorship is still legally an option for anybody who wants to do it with or without a lawyer, but the government has made it harder of Canada to do a group of 5, meaning anybody can apply, but meaning will you be eligible to be processed? The people overseas have to have UNHCR documentation.
Let's say they have it. Let's say they have
Oh, okay,
it. But
okay.
at the same time, at the same group of
So that's
5.
a different discussion, actually. So what I mean is, it's in all the sponsorship. So you're right. If you make 40,000 and you say you're part of 10 groups of 5,
Yeah, I think
that may be a
once
problem. You know what I mean?
it's
That's
it's
what you
not
mean.
allowed for 5 people
You know what I mean?
to sponsor more than one.
Right. Like you can't. That's what I mean. You can't be part of 10 groups of 5 with your. You know what I mean? Like
You should
because
wait
it'll-
the next year to.
I have, so, okay.
Well, you know what I mean, because otherwise you could get, 30 people who all kind of do different configurations, and you're sponsoring 50. You could, but like, the math is supposed to work out, right? The math is supposed to be that you really are supposed to help
Why
them
doesn't work
settle.
out if there is, with each family that they sponsor, there is a main sponsor?
Well, because you're all technically committing to the financial support of that refugee of settlement. Doesn't mean you're helping them for 10 years, but for 1 or 2 or 3 years helping them with, right? How do you get a job? How do you get an apartment? Your basic needs when you come, or whatever. It doesn't have to cost $1 million, but if you only earn 50,000 and you have your own family of 4, and you're part of 5 groups of 5, or even if you literally had to put in 3,000-4,000, let's say, or 1,000 for each. Again, like I was saying, how does the math work out? You make 40,000.
Yes.
You have your own. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying the math doesn't work out from a Canadian. Because even as a Canadian, you'd be like, I'm lending you money, but you've got 20 other loans of 5,000. Right? So if you're like, I trust you, but how are you going to pay this back if you already have 100,000 and you're asking for another 20 from me, right? The math won't work out if you're like, but you only make 40,000 a year, and you're going to pay back $500 a month to everybody. You're going to have to live to be 150 to pay me back, right? So it's the same sort of thing. The government, it needs to still look legitimate, right? So yeah, if group of 5. You kind of have to be part of 1 group of 5, maybe 2. If you make 100,000, 120, you could say I'm part of 2 groups of 5 because I make higher than the average Canadian, let's say, right? So you could probably, right? Because they look at statistics. What's the average family size? What's the average earnings?
And how long do you have to wait? Let's say they brought the family, a group of 5 brought the family.
I don't know
How
off
long
the
do you
top of
have
my head how long the sponsorship is. So the answer is it depends on how long the sponsorship is and if the family that you've already sponsored is perhaps settled. So I don't know off the top
Because
of my
I
head.
heard that
Probably I would say
the
at least
family-
3 years.
if the family
I had to
works-
guess 3 years.
2 years at least, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2, 3, 4, 5 years if I had to take a wild guess, but more like 2 or 3. You're saying you think it's 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just guessing, but that was my.
Well, I heard something different. I heard
Okay,
that
yeah, I don't know off the top. I can look it up and post it on that group thing.
once they work and they get 5 paychecks.
Right, that's what I mean. That would make sense because you're not supposed to be helping them for the next 20 years. You're supposed to help them resettle, not like pay them, pay for them for the rest of their lives, right? That's the idea. Even as a refugee, you're supposed to sort of have a plan to get out of, the problems that you had, as bad as they were. A year, whatever, year and a half, get a job, exactly, right?
Okay, thank you.
But,
So you mentioned the Palestinian situation in Syria
right,
and even outside Syria.
right.
Who were in Syria. My son left Syria a year ago to Malaysia. So
That's another one. I was going to say the Asia, I'm hearing Vietnam, and yeah.
Yeah. And he applied as a refugee there, but they never had. They keep,
Right. And again, they probably don't have a robust refugee system there. I'm guessing. Yeah,
So
unfortunately.
you said that they are not given the same opportunity like the Syrians.
Well, what I was saying is that, and again, I haven't thought this all through and done the research. Is what I know is that an UNRWA refugee is what we call carved out of the definition. I mean, not me, it's like when UNRWA was created, right? Like, help me out, it was created 60 years ago. It was whatever, politically, for whatever reason, carved out of the definition of the United Nations High Commission. So all I'm saying is that
They are refugees.
I know, but I'm just saying it creates a
50 years ago.
no, I know, but what I mean is it creates, well, you know, I don't want to, yeah, the problem is conceptually the idea of a refugee is that you're taken into a new country like me. I came as, I mean, from communist country stuff, I came as a government-sponsored refugee in 1974 because, again, back then, it was the big bad communist countries and Canada was, you know, whatever the situation, right? But the idea is that I'm no longer a refugee because I'm a Canadian, naturalized Canadian, right? So I don't want to have that debate, but what I'm saying is that's the problem, right? Is that the world created UNRWA refugees for generations, right? So it's not a political discussion about anything, but that's the problem. So what I mean is that that's a problem. I don't have the answer tonight.
But
that I'm saying it creates a
go,
different
right?
situation, right? It creates a different situation.
But they still need a place to go. Like, so
They need a place to go,
like,
so that-
if they are UNRWA refugees,
That's right.
and they are no
Right, so my answer is they need a place to go. The problem
outside
is
Syria.
they've been allotted to different
So-
countries, right? Lebanon, Syria, exactly. They need a, right, so,
So
and
they need a place to go.
correct. So that would be an argument to make.
Why they don't fit in the definition?
And
Well, as I said, that's because that's how the international community carved it out, you know, when it was created. So I'm not, and so the problem is Canada just incorporates international laws, right? They
It's
can't.
a matter of convenience for them. Okay, let's exclude that.
Well, it's a matter of international, and I'm not protecting Canada. I'm just saying that that's not Canada. Canada could create its own law, but it would be against international jurisprudence of the United Nations Convention and then UNRWA. So yeah, so I'm not. So all I'm saying is it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing because you actually made a good point. Actually, you made a good point that that they need a place to go, and the places that they've been allotted to, Lebanon, Syria, whatever, where they're Palestinian, Syrian refugee, that sort of could be like an argument or a submission, right? That really. They don't have any place to go, even in the countries that have sort of, yeah. So I don't have. My point was, I'm just saying that it's just something that it's carved out.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm Syrian.
Yeah.
My ex was Palestinian,
Yeah.
so my children are Palestinian.
Right.
In Syria's law and the things there. How
Right.
I'm Syrian.
Right. No, I know. And because of Syrian citizenship laws, they're not right. And again, Canada can't do anything about that except what it does from an immigration application, right? Canada can't affect citizenship laws of other countries. I know, unfortunately. Like yeah, even though they're born in Syria, they're not Syrian citizens, right? To you, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And another comment there is the constituency of the governing party here in Canada really doesn't care about immigration or refugees.
What?
So why?
So my comment is, I agree
why
with
would
you,
you think that apply pressure on the government would work? Like, why would it work? Like, to apply pressure or raise hell in the media and that? Because the people who are going to sign their name, like, who are going to elect conservative members, they really don't give a damn about refugees or Syria or
Right, so the answer to that is normally, I do agree with you. First of all, immigration is low unless they want to make it a negative thing. So what's happened with the whole foreign worker, and they've made it, whatever, foreign workers can only be here 3-4 years, and all this stuff, because it's easy to pick on the, blame the foreigner for quote-unquote taking Canadian jobs. Now listen, we're Canadians. We don't want foreigners to come and take our jobs, right? But the reality is we know that generally it's not true. As in many countries, the jobs that even when my parents, as I say, I helped them clean the shitty toilets. We were not, refugees, but when we came as new immigrants, why? Because Canadians who'd been here a long time don't want to clean shitty toilets, right? So, my parents were happy to clean shitty toilets for $20 even back in 1974 because minimum wage was $3 an hour, right? And my dad would give me $1 to help him, and that's the story that even my life, so that whole thing. So immigrants are easy targets. The difference in this kind of situation is it's not just about quote-unquote refugees who have no ties to Canada. The difference is, as I was saying earlier, I think, and I'm not saying 100%, the difference is that the link to the MPs or whatever it is, conservative, liberal, whatever, is people who are here, who are voting constituents, and other non-interested Canadians, and I say a lot of who do care when either because they care because they're politically sort of leaning more socialist, or whatever you want to call it, right? Or they care because they hear it and they see it and they go that, you might be even living in a fancy part of Rockcliffe and you kind of go, Yeah, that does, you know, so that doesn't make any sense. Why would a Canadian family who has a decent job, why should their family be rotting in, you know, whatever, even, you know, rotting in Brazil, not rotting, you know, I just mean like being like, why shouldn't they be helped? And white, blonde, you know, Canadian in that sense. So I think they care less and they can do a lot more negative things, which they have. There's still pushback. I'll give you a specific example that I wasn't part of, but my colleagues were part of. The whole thing when they reduced the benefits for, medical benefits for refugees. Again, right? You're right. Nobody cares. Refugee doesn't vote. The people who work with them vote, but there was very little. There was a lot of the, yeah, we don't care. We're going to still do this. What happened was, again, right, it took more than just one day. Groups got, and it took a lot of, you know.
But then
like,
doctors got involved.
Right, they got the doctors involved, and they made it as I say, they made it not a refugee issue. They made it a public health issue, right? Oh, wait a minute, it's gonna affect, like, oh, it's gonna affect the clinic if the sick person comes in, and we have, you know. So yeah, they made it a public policy, bigger issue. I'm a doctor, I have an obligation to help anybody, right? So they made it. They knew how to, again, right, how to put the political spin on it, right? Not, you know, they made it.
But still, the government's still fighting it anyway.
The asshole judge, right? I mean, not, you know, not to, you know. So, so that's my answer. I can't tell you that it will work, but I think that there are elements of the facts
we have to do something.
That can work.
We have to do something.
Because there isn't really, like I said, a negative in the sense. There isn't a negative. The negative is that you're here in Canada, you're stressed, you're probably trying to send money back, you're probably daily worrying and watching the news, you're probably daily, right? I mean, so that's actually, I mean, you can't quantify that, but there actually is a negative effect. In a weird way on, not in a weird way, but like on the Canadian economy in a weird way too, right? Like there are statistics where it says, right, the more stressed people are, the more sick days they have, like that. So they're actually
struggling to send money over.
Right, and so there is it, right? Not to, and there's, and I mean, you might not want to put this, but yeah, you're sending back $500. That's money that's not in the Canadian economy, right? So it's maybe not a strong argument, right? But it is an argument, right? Because you know, like the Filipino nannies, right? They make $1,600 a month, and they send back $800 every month back home to the Philippines. Well, that's money that's not in the Canadian economy, right? So, I mean, so there is actually a negative effect, right? I mean, you know, it doesn't mean you can't send money back home, but there isn't. Why not be spending $500, $800, $1,000 a month on helping them settle in Canada so that they can get jobs, pay taxes, you know, and all that sort of, I mean, that's not necessarily the strongest argument, but there is an argument to be made for that, right? Having them settled in Canada, start to buy houses, pay taxes, rent apartments, all that sort of stuff, actually contributes to the Canadian economy, right?
So what's the conclusion of all what you say? Like, is it hard to get someone here?
Yes, it's always hard. The answer is it's always hard, because if it was easy, everybody. It's not impossible, but it's always hard, because like I said, it's an issue of numbers. Just like with, you know, in the backlog when it used to take 8 years out of Damascus to have a skilled worker application be looked at, and they've changed the whole system. Why? Because there's like 1 million applications being accepted and only 200,000, you know, visas issued every year all across, you know, the world, right? So it's an issue of numbers. It's always an issue of numbers, right? I mean, I always use examples. It's just like you buy your plane ticket tomorrow, it's going to cost you more unless you can get a standby, right? You buy it 2 months in advance, right? So it's always an issue of supply, demand, and cost. Not, you know, it's not always. It's not that I'm a Marxist, but it tends to be an issue of supply and demand, because let's face it, if Canada had 10 applicants to immigrate to Canada this year, I bet you they would accept just about any Syrian Palestinian refugee who was under 40, maybe under 45, healthy, or whatever the situation, right? Why? Because we need bodies here, right? Why? Because we're not having enough babies in Canada, right? So, I mean, if there was different facts, for sure it would be a different reality, right? So it's not easy. I'm not here, or you know, none of this is easy or guaranteed or simple. I mean, it would be hours and hours of work.
On the government, I don't believe so. Like,
yeah.
Look at Europe. The Syrian community over there, they didn't put the pressure on the government, because Europe government, they want immigrants, they want Syrians.
Right. So you're right. So there's a different kind of reality.
Syria is equal ISIS here. Look at the media.
Right.
Syria is ISIS.
Right.
So how are we going to change the media?
Right. So the only way you can do it in a free and democratic society where it's basically generally freedom of speech, is to counter that, right? How do you counter bad speech? You counter it with good speech, and then in the, you know, in the war of ideas, you hope the good stuff wins. I mean, I'm not being very like simplistic about it, but that's really the only good option we have personally. I don't want to make this a political discussion, what everybody else thinks. I'll take Canada's imperfect system compared to most places in the world any day. I mean, you know, and I'll debate that till the day I die. It's not about that Canada's perfect. It's not, you know, why are we all here? Why are my parents here, right? Why are you here, right? If it was so great where you are, you wouldn't have left your place where you know the smells, the language, the culture, whatever, right? So I'm not, you know, so you counter that with your own position, and again, the way of social media, you just pound it, and you hope you win. And if you don't, you just say we fought the good fight, unfortunately, because that, you know, but that's the only way that I see. I could be wrong, I don't know, but that's the only way that I see.
I think it would be a very good idea if we work hard against this government in next election.
But that means, I mean, we are like, that means like literally today. I'm not saying everybody leave their jobs and whatever, be political animals, but yeah, that means there isn't a, I mean, I don't see this as like an immediate answer, but like the gentleman that was saying that left, right? I mean, I'm not, you know, judging the Syrian community or Palestinian community, but yeah, there is an element of, you know, yes, how you group together for any future stuff. I mean, whether it's taking out the bad seeds that are not helping your cause, where if you're, you know, if you're more focused on getting things done in Canada versus the problems that you left back home. And again, I'm not judging, I'm just saying that that's for you to decide to some extent as your own community, right? Not for me to speak for you or anybody else, right? How you decide to deal with that, right? I mean, whether it's fractured or not, most communities are fractured. Listen, I mean, Jewish community, you've got Reform, you've got Conservative, you've got like a million different, you know, Jewish organizations, right? But I mean, to some extent, they come together when, whatever, it's an issue that's strong enough, right? So it doesn't have to be only one Syrian-Palestinian voice, right? But there is an element of some sort of people who are like-minded. You're never going to have everybody like-minded, right? I mean, in any community, any religion, I mean, that's like robots, right? We don't live in robot land, we live in human land, right? So human land, people have differences of opinion, but the issue is how you resolve them and how you decide for the greater good, you're going to put some of your differences aside, right? If you all agree on that greater good, or the ones who agree are in that group, right? That's how you have strength, right? I mean, I'm not talking philosophy, I'm just talking about my own experiences in real life, right? We associate with people that are generally like-minded. We encounter people that don't agree with us because it's life and whatever, right? You can debate, walk away, argue, sue, whatever you want to do, right? But in general, we tend to, you know, we find strength in the people that are similar to us, right? Whether it's family, friends, religious, political, whatever you want to call it, right? Social, right? So that's what, I mean, long term, I think probably needs to happen in general, but I don't have all those answers, right? But I mean, in terms of trying to help, like I said, families and etc., it's a little bit of a lot of everything. Obviously, you know, you have jobs and lives and families, but really, like anything, when it's important, you put aside an hour or two a week or whatever it is, right? And have a meeting, have an online meeting, do whatever, and, you know, collaborate. And there's always going to be a few people that could probably come into the lead, right? And then other people that just say, let me know what I can do when I can do it, right? Sign a petition, sign an online petition, forward an online petition, do an application, not do an application, right?
Yeah, to your point, I think.
So
I think like most Canadians haven't met with any Syrian.
Right.
So they know.
Yeah, or they don't think about it because it doesn't affect them until they hear a story, right? Exactly.
They hear about Syria from TV.
Right. Exactly.
So all they hear about Syrians, what the government needs to show people.
Exactly.
And the government now needs to show people about war, about the ISIS, the risk of ISIS coming here and
I'm just looking at the time, I'm listening, yeah, we're a little bit okay.
So, if I speak about my own experience and of how I try to raise awareness within my small community.
Absolutely.
In my neighborhood, in my job. Like,
exactly, because you start locally. They would say start locally, exactly.
I said, my coworkers always ask me, are you going to sponsor your family? So this is an
example. Exactly. They want. And they're not Syrians, and they're not necessarily Middle Eastern. They're just right. So they have. That's me. They're almost like not hungry for information. They are in a way hungry for information. Meaning real stories, real people, right? Real people affected.
My my point here is like we need to raise awareness about the situation that is undergoing there.
I would say your stories as the Canadian refugees, Syrian, Palestinian families, exactly, and then the other story, exactly. And that's where social media, you don't really need millions of dollars of campaign, you just need committed people who know how to use the media and, and again, doing little, like not saying, it's all like in one day, but yes, bringing the human factor to it, for sure.
Yeah, in a case, for instance, if I have a niece or nephew, I believe that they have a good story.
Yeah, we say story. I hate using the word story. You know what? I just mean life, whatever experience. I say story because
Just hypothetically, if for instance I decide tomorrow that I want to go with income, I believe that it's maybe I bet 10% or 20%. There is a chance. How long does it take usually? Would I expect like at 5 years?
Yeah, no, so I was saying, like I said, again, technically speaking, there's no guarantee of the amount of time. The current average time, well, it looks like Amman, Jordan is now technically responsible for people in Syria, so if they're living elsewhere, you kind of have to apply to the embassy that's sort of responsible for where the person is, whether they're legally or illegally or whatever. But the average, I would say, for, again, I say family class applications or humanitarian type requests, should be about 2-3 years. The average, Amman was showing 22 months presently, and it's taking about 30-45 days in Mississauga. You're going to get a no anyway, as an example. As I said, trying to sponsor your 25-year-old niece who doesn't fit the definition of like a minor niece who's orphan. We already know they don't fit the definition, and that Mississauga is going to say, it's not a formal sponsorship, but you said to go to the embassy, so we've sent it to the embassy. I would say, again, the average, let's say 2 years, whatever, 2 to 3 years, right? But my response is that, again, it's not that you have a right to a quick answer, which you don't. You definitely, anything more than 3 years would be considered, I would call, beyond the realm of normal under the current approach. The courts have said in some cases, I've gone to court where people were waiting 5, 6, 7 years for whatever situation under the older type of rules, that it's a little bit too long, right? So I would say something like 2-3 years would be kind of like what I would say average normal. But again, here's an example where the law and the sort of political, whatever you want to call the pressure type thing that we've been talking about that you could employ, and again, how strong it depends on the MP, who gets in, your own personal connection, which whatever that's where putting pressure, because under the law too, it's saying, okay, yeah, a normal applicant, whatever example of how long it takes is a good question. It may take that, it may not. Remember, it could be a no, it could be a yeah. But the point is that keeping up, not just political realities are not just doing something for a week. And again, I'm not a political animal, right? So this is more like it literally is long term if people want to take up the man. Maybe only 10 people will take up the fight. I don't know. But I would argue that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? It doesn't mean you have to copy. Look to the Haitian community, right? Now, they don't all get along. Whatever, the Jewish community, the Lebanese community, they have their own issues. People who've been here 20, 30 years. I'm not saying I know all Lebanese. I mean, there's Druze, there's this, but for things that matter, right? Like the ones who are together have gotten things done, politically, whatever. Yeah, it took them 20, 30, years, right? So this is not something, right? Give you a quick last example, the issue when there were the Lebanese Canadians who were stuck in Lebanon, right? Again, here's an example. Of course, then the government got backlash, right? Why did you spend hundreds of thousands to evacuate Canadian Lebanese who were there on purpose, who weren't on vacation, whatever, right? But at the end of the day, yeah, why would the Canadian government run and hire private boats? I mean, when you think about it, right? Why? Because the Lebanese community put pressure when that happened, right? Rightly or wrongly, it still happened, right? So I'm not, saying I agree or disagree, but I'm saying that's, an example, whatever it was, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? Yeah, would that have been?
It wasn't a conservative government, and at the same time,
right? And again, it was
conservative. Yeah,
I think it was
those are Canadian who were somewhere else, and
so meaning standing up for your citizens.
A dangerous situation.
But my argument is other people have been that and they don't do that. Like what I'm saying is there's been lots of examples where I'm just saying that the reason that happened that way, my political analysis and my, with my English background degree, is that because the Lebanese community in Canada put pressure on them. Like if there wasn't such a strong Lebanese Canadian pressure,
but that's not the main reason.
I don't think the same would happen.
That's not the main reason. They haven't just, they're Canadians. Okay?
Yeah, but if
And
I
they-
go to
and they
China,
have
then no,
obligations.
I'll have to argue with you there. That isn't true because when you're in another country, it actually doesn't matter. When you have when you have multiple citizenships, actually, legally speaking, Canada does not have to send votes. I'm telling you, I'm not arguing with you. It's not about that. I'm saying I hold a Romanian passport and a Canadian passport. Okay, so if I get arrested in Malaysia for whatever drugs that it isn't true, or Romania, actually the government, you've seen the Egyptian gentleman who's stuck in Egypt, or like the truth of the matter, yes, it's very political. It depends on who you are, where you are, what's going on, whether or not there's a civil war breaking out in Lebanon. They didn't have to do votes, actually. The answer is, why were you there? A lot of them were living there so again, I'm not going to, so actually, legally speaking, when you have especially when you have multiple citizenships, which most of them did, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to send votes, actually. You could be mad about that, but they actually didn't have to. They did that because they were politically pressured. I'm telling you, it's true. If you read the Foreign Affairs website, it says, never mind if you have multiple. When you travel to another country, if you get caught, yes, Canada will try to help you with legal. Yes, Canada will. But Canada can't send a plane in there, like, to get you out, or a boat. They can if they want to. But Canada doesn't have to. Canada can do what it needs to do politically to get you out, whether you hold multiple or not. But when you hold multiple, it's actually worse, the truth is. I'm speaking the same. I'm Romanian and Canadian, so
in your home country, like in your own home country, like
even out of my home country, they would say, but you're also Romanian. So I'm just saying.
In Romania, they cannot help you, but they can help you in.
Like I said, they can help you, but they don't have to send a private. I'm just saying they don't have to do what they did. Is my point. I'm not saying they wouldn't help you and they can't help you, and they do have that obligation. I'm just saying the reason that they went that far, if you ask almost any commentator, whether they're I think left or right, but it would be because there was political pressure.
And maybe there was an election coming too. So.
Right, I can't remember. I really can't remember, but I'm just saying.
When
I'm just saying.
When Harvard had...
it was a minority government. Anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm not a political expert. Yeah.
Lilian, do you remember?
Yeah, so I don't remember. It's been, but I'm just saying that for sure.
So, if we talk about the cost, we need to know about this. Like how much it's going to cost, because he said $550 for adults.
Yeah, that's the government processing fee. Yeah, that's the government processing fee.
But how about your charge?
Yeah, so as I said, I showed an example. First of all, lawyers never like to talk about their legal fees publicly. I say never. If they do, I don't publish my legal fees either, although I'm changing my website. I'm changing actually in the process. I'm doing a lot of changes, but lawyers don't talk. I asked my trusted colleagues what they would, and I say not because they're my friends, but people who do these kinds of cases, because most don't, meaning cases that are outside the normal type of case or a lot of humanitarian applications. I found some that I posted there as examples of some lawyers across Canada. So the going rate for, I'll just tell you, even locally, I'll be honest with you, some of the lawyers I trained a few years ago were charging more for applications than I was who trained them, okay? So just, I'm not saying that to be like, I was like, what are you charging? You're charging $35, I'm charging $2,500. But like, I trained you, you're a lawyer for 3 years and I'm a lawyer for 15. So the going rate for any kind of basic sponsorship or humanitarian, I'll tell you, you can call around, what I would call a qualified lawyer who knows what they're doing would be like, let's say $3,500, just to give you an example. That means like, you're doing it, doesn't mean you're doing the forms, but you're reviewing, making sure you're doing submissions, you're putting the package, you're putting the, whatever. Anything more than that, most lawyers will say, you're getting to sort of 4, 5, 6, I've heard as much as 10,000. I asked one of my colleagues as a quick example, I said, what do you think Giddy Mammon is a big, if you Google him, he's a big lawyer in Toronto. I know him, my friend Lisa Winter knows him as a colleague. He's known, he's done some public political stuff, not political, but stuff on, with, he does stuff in the media, whatever. And I said, what do you think Giddy would charge for something like this, like a group of 5 type, whatever, H&C spot? She said I talked to him about this, and she said he probably wouldn't do anything for less than 10, just to give an example. So all that to answer is, I don't know. What I mean to say is, I'm giving you the range, and even on the website, what most lawyers, a few that I found, will advertise. 3,500, I say, to 10,000, that's not on there. I saw 5 or 6 for sort of refugee in Canada. This is not a typical case at all. A lot of it could be used for more than one file, obviously, meaning general submissions on the country conditions. There will be differences because of specific situations it's not like one sort of template. My answer is I don't know. My answer is, that's why I wanted to just throw it out here tonight, not looking for work, but meaning to have this discussion. I'm not getting paid for this and I'm not sending you a bill. But The answer is it depends, unfortunately, meaning it depends on how many files to some extent. Meaning, if there's 50, the answer is, I mean, as good as I am, and as weird hours as I keep, as some of my clients say, you email at 3 in the morning. Sometimes I'm up at 3 in the morning and I email whatever, sometimes I'm in a different time zone and they think I'm emailing at 3 in the morning, but I don't know, meaning it depends on how many, but I'm giving you the range. I don't think anybody can afford or wants to pay $10,000. I'm a lawyer, I can't afford most legal lawyer fees, okay? $500 an hour, whatever you hear in Toronto lawyer, so I don't know, I'm just telling you what the range is. I think probably something like 4 or 5 or 6 is probably what the most that anybody could afford in a sense, realistically speaking, over whatever of some sort of a, payment up front that's at least whatever, a couple thousand, and then maybe a payment plan of some sort. I don't know. So I don't know. My answer is I don't know. Maybe nobody wants to go forward, and I don't want to say like, that's fine. I'm not here to say sign up today and pay me $5,000. So I don't know. My answer is it depends on how many people. But like I said, my response, to get back to your comment about it's too late, the truth is it is, I say too late in the sense, the truth is there's so many unknowns. And I can totally understand why most people would say it's like gambling, right? Except that you're not gambling because it's people's lives, your family, it's your lives. And as I say to everybody, if you do nothing, it's 100% chance that probably nothing is going to happen. I mean, I don't want to sound philosophical. You do nothing, it's 100% chance, right? People, my friends, even when I was in undergrad, oh, you're applying for law school? Yeah, I want to apply for law school. And I'm like, well, why don't you get the application kit? They're like, oh, yeah, I don't want to get, so I'm not trying, part of, people say you're so smart you went to law school. Actually, no. I would say like 60% of people don't ever go to law school because they don't actually fill out the form. It's not that the lawyers are so smart, it's that they filled out the form, they got the transcripts, they got the reference, you kind of do what you need to do and hope for the best, right? Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know in the sense that, but I'm telling you that the range, realistically, probably, like I said, 3,500, 4, 5, 6 would probably be, I'll be honest with you, if I were to do this, even on 5 files, I'd probably be working 300 hours, right? It's not like, my hourly rate would be the equivalent of having a job at Starbucks, right?
And that's per application, even the application.
Yeah, like a family member. Yeah, so again, that's what I mean. So if somebody says, well, I have, 4 kids and the cousin, and, so yeah, so that's what I was saying, I don't know, it depends on kind of what the facts are. That's why I did sort of a little kind of form about profile to sort of get a little bit faster the information about who are you and who's the, whoever has email, I tried to share it with, I think it was only 10 or 12 of you, kind of who are you as a general profile, meaning whatever, how much do you earn or what's your whatever, and who's the family members, but just generally what's their background, right? And sort of to give a quick idea. Because if there's 5 people, it's sort of different situations,
Under the group of 5, the sponsors of the 5 would be responsible for the settlement and the
there's a whole settlement plan. And in
however, in terms of the under humanitarian and compassionate grounds, there won't be that responsibility. Would there be responsibility?
Right. So the answer is so my answer to you, though, again, as a strategic lawyer, that they don't teach you this in law school, right? But my strategy is you kind of want to feed the government and the public, meaning Canadians who might, or the politicians, and you're thinking ahead. Not to sound, a good lawyer is thinking 4 moves ahead. I don't want to, my dad taught me chess, schach, whatever, I don't play it that much anymore. I played stupidly, right, when he taught me. I played with the next move, right? And my dad's like, and he did 5 moves and I was in checkmate, right? Because he's already thinking 5 moves ahead, and you can't think just the next step, right? If I didn't do this, okay, then, right? So basically, to answer that is, right, as a humanitarian is nothing and everything. It's as much as you put in it, or it's as little as you put in it. I would argue to have the greatest chance is, again, you're kind of mixing in, not a refugee case, because it technically can't be a refugee case, but you're using the forms and the information they ask you for, which is not rocket science, right? How are you going to help them? Generally, do you have a budget made out? Where are they going to live the first few months? Use that information and actually sign a sponsorship agreement, which is not a formal one that they could necessarily approve, although they could, right? Because a humanitarian doesn't have to have a sponsorship, but again, we would be doing it as a family sponsorship, not a refugee, with a humanitarian request to say, I know they don't fit the definition of family member, spouse, grandmother, orphan, niece, and nephew, but I want you to still process it as a sponsorship, as a family class, because it's my niece, it's my nephew, whatever. Here, I've signed the agreement. Here, we've given you kind of a settlement plan, you know, not sort of taking the plan they have for the group of 5, but doing it in your own Word document, right? Here's where they'll live, here's what, you know, kind of thinking they'll have free DVDs or, you know, whatever, really thinking about anything. So it's not just like, I'm going to have all the answers. It's you know, it's sort of, it said it would be
so my question is just what I understand is the aspect of responsibility is the same.
Yes, I would argue yes.
Or humanitarian.
I would argue yes, because to have a good chance, because like I said, you don't want to be saying, I want them here, but I don't want to be responsible. You know, I mean, even though that may be what you're thinking and what I think, to sell it, I don't think that would sell.
So you want to tell the government that this will cost you nothing? And
well, very little.
Exactly.
There's always a cost. And
yeah.
I said an OHIP card they would be entitled to, you know, but if they get sick, God forbid, anybody can get sick. Even if you come as a skilled worker, you could get sick the day after you, or, you know, 3 months later, and they're going to pay for you, right? So you can't say it won't cost anything. Society costs, that's why we pay taxes, right? I mean, like to say, you know, I'm not going to cost anything. But yeah, to say, in general, they're not going to go on welfare 3 months after, and if they do, you can send me a bill for it, right? I mean, whatever, for the $800 a month or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, that's essentially what you're telling the government, which could happen. I mean, so you have to understand that that's technically what theoretically could happen. If you could bring your family over, you have a breakdown, they go on welfare, whatever, right? That then the government would be saying, like, wait a minute, I think we approved this as an agency and you sponsored them. I'm just saying, right? So there is real, it's not just like do it for the fun of it. I mean, there is real. That's why it's serious, and you should think like, yeah, do you really, can you help your family in the sense, like, what if, yeah. And then I said, I know we got to be out by 8 exactly, so.
So what's the advantage in going with the bigger group?
Well, like I said, I think from a political, I mean, not political, but like the way it can be used from the political, social media, bringing attention, stories, like in that sense, like you're, not just out, it just looks like you're more organized. I mean, I want, not that about looking, but groups kind of sell better than single individuals, right? I mean, I don't like the GoFundMe, right?
But the decision will be individual, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, in the sense that yes.
If it didn't have a case, there is no point to project the whole.
Right. I think that's what I mean. It's very individual. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't mean like I'm going to use the same. If I were to use the same cover letter, I mean, a lot of the country conditions would be the same, but the particular facts are particular facts for sure. It'd be individualized decision. Yeah, it's not like you can register a group and tell the government make a group decision in that sense. That's right. So it's just more from the political. Approve one, not approve another. Yeah, yeah, I would say yes, of course, in that sense.
Because it's unfair for the others.
Correct. So yeah, so it'd be an individualized decision. I agree. The reason I'm saying group is to kind of like, again, try and, you know, the research on country conditions obviously can be used for generally everybody, again, depending on the facts of the case, right? Similarly, by the city or by the region or by, you know, whatever it is, right? But it is individualized, yes, yes. It would be, legally speaking, too. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, so do you want to do like a wrap-up maybe about maybe how to keep in touch, email, WhatsApp? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How we can make it all like a group?
How can we make it like a group? I don't know. So I mean,
like
so
if you like a group of us, we can go to you and we hire you to.
Sure, I don't know the answer to that. So it means I don't know. Like it's not like I would do a group agreement, but I don't know. I mean, I would say almost like I said, in all honesty, it's not about like running and hiring me. But you're right. Like, in a way, it's too late. It's not, and it is, right? Yeah, whether it's a fresh new government or whatever minority, or but you know, like so that you know, again, that's just something that would unravel as it goes along. If you put an application in 2 months or you know whatever, you scramble, get an application, and so when I'm talking about group, that's what I'm saying. Like, really, there is an element of it's like anything, right? Sign up before May 30th. So they really mean sign up before May 30th. If you come on June the 2nd, like. It's the regular price and wait for another sale. So I'm not trying to be like that, but there is an element like, meaning for me to know as the group, like, are there 10 of you who want to go forward, and could you hire me in the next 2 weeks or whatever with like a deposit of whatever, right, $1,000 or $1,500? I don't know the answer how to, I mean, I'm not saying y'all have to hire me together in one payment. I don't know, but I'm just saying, for me, as a lawyer, that, you know, working, there's an element of control that, like, having 1,000 emails back and forth is not very productive, right? So there'd be an element of, in a way of, like, project management, right? Oh, there's 10 who are hiring me by this Friday, okay, great. It would still be handled individually, right? But then I would know, okay, these 10 that have hired me as of this week, I mean, there's an element of now I'm going to allot my time in the next month and budget, you know, 20 hours a week, you know, 2 hours for each one, send, you know, I try to now do not 1,000 emails back and forth, right? I try to say, here's what I need from you, please send me in 1 or 2 or 3, or even by mail or by email, whatever, in 1 or 2. Don't send me 30 emails back and forth answering one little answer on each thing, because it's just not a very productive way of your time and my time, and it takes time to unravel that even from the email. I've got to print it still, and, you know, and all that. So I don't know the answer to that. I'm thinking out loud. I'm just saying that I don't want things then, oh, 3 weeks later another one wants to, because it's not that I want to say no, but then it becomes like disruptive, because I really do see it as, if 20 of you would want to go forward in 2 weeks, I could sort of do 20, but maybe not. I would literally need to say, okay, what's the price? Yeah, and I'm going to, like, contact, I've got, you know, 2, 3 trusted lawyers who like I said, my colleagues, my former law student, Bahar in Toronto, who I could say, and you know, are you available the next month to work on like 5, you know, H&C types where I'm leading the files, but yeah, okay, how much would you need for it, right? 5,000, and then pay, you know, out of the what I've, you know, what I'm charging, right? So there's an element to that. It's almost like the business side of the law, like needing to budget, because it's not like I'm going to say yes to 100 people, take your money, and then I can't do the files in. And when I say do the files, I mean in like 1, 2, 3 months maximum, right? Like to get a submitted application in, right? I'm not talking about a file taking 6, 8 months to put together. So there's an element of, like, you've paid, and it's got to be almost like a part-time job, as stressful as it is, to like get, again, right, as much as what we can and what we can't, we have to deal with and explain and document. So the answers I don't know tonight. Maybe we can chat about it and discuss. I don't know. And I mean, there's, you know, and there's stuff that you could do that, you know, in the sense taking over some of this, like, I can't do it all. I mean, I admit it, I can't do it all. I mean, I get no sleep, and, you know, that's not going to help anybody. But, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't have an answer. If any, I'm open to ideas. But I am, like I said, literally I would say there is an element of a deadline. So there is an element, not that, you know, if I would say in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks maximum, I mean, that's too late. If, you know, if there are 5 people, 10 people, somehow figure out a way, and I mean, be open about the financial part and say, yeah, you know, what are we paying or what are you paying, and we're all paying together, but separate agreements, let's say, and you know, and then it's for me to control to say, yeah, I need the payment by Friday or whatever, at least to start, right? That's my issue. I'm not going to report it to everybody, but have an agreement that, yeah, there's 5 of you for like 99.9% sure, yeah, the price is this is the payment plan, and go forward. And so I don't want to say everybody has to get together, but for me, I don't want to have trickling in the sense it's not going to, it's not even about the money, it's not going to help have trickling in of files, because I see this as there is an element of using it together. So even if you don't want to organize as a group, I would want to get permission, let's say 5 or 10 families that do go forward, I would want to get to some extent permission and agreement, and, you know, to say, is it okay if after we get these files in that we try to get some media attention, that we try to get on CTV, that we try to get on CBC radio, because I do have some contacts, you know, that, I mean, again, use, abuse, whatever you want, you know, some might say no, some might say yes, right? And try to use it as a group and tell your story. Anywhere and anywhere, and, you know, so there'd be an element that you kind of want to all agree that it's okay, and if not, that there's an element to say, well, I've got 10 groups, only 3 of the families are here to speak tonight, which is fine, the other ones don't want to speak, but I want to approach it, even for me, if you don't as a group want, I would not like to get the media attention because I'm going to get media attention, although I would, I guess, but to some extent use it if you feel you can't on your own be as kind of vocal with your MPs, then to some extent use, you know, that I'm the lawyer, you know, with the families, a little, you know, then at least then it's, you know, I would want to use that, because I think that there's some, I think there is something good that can come of that. I don't know how, I don't know where, but I think it could. So that's, I don't know if I really answered it, but that's kind of, yeah, my answer to that, yeah.
So you go to media when the cases are refused and you are in a PP?
So my answer is this, I don't go to the media that often. If you Google my name, you're not going to find, there are...
No, I mean when you take the 5, let's say, you have
well,
5
I would say that I would want it to be part, this is not part of the law, but I would want it to be part of the strategy, right? Because if anything, then it's like, I took your money, I put it in, and then I say, let's wait 2 or 3 years and hope for the best. Which is a strategy, right? Which is a strategy that most lawyers might take. It would not be my strategy on this case. The story a little bit that Syria is not all about ISIS, right? Syria is about real people, really affected. People kind of know that, but they don't, right? Because they're not really hearing and seeing the stories, right? And that's the problem also with media, right? It's popular for 30 seconds and then it's not the next day. That's just part of the world we live in. People's attention spans are like of an ant, right? Like I read it on Twitter and it's gone, and that's fine. So the way you've got to keep it up on the Twitter and the Facebook and that is to keep kind of knocking on that door, right?
And again, the government, like the way they handle.
Yeah, listen. I'm not saying this is the only issue on the government's plate. I'm not so, you know, like it's not the only issue, but it is the issue for you, right? Or it is an important issue for you, right? That's always how life is, right? So why not make it an issue, right? Meaning it's not the only thing that people are going to be voting on or thinking about, but why not make it an issue? Even if your files are just submitted now, why not make it an issue? And say, yeah, we felt we had no other option. Rightly or wrongly, we're doing what we can based on the facts and based on trying to help our families and, you know, whatever all the stuff is, right? And be judged for it how you want, you know, people are going to judge you how they want. So, if you go forward, yeah. Yeah. And then I'll probably have to wrap up, yes.
Just a question about the mechanism of putting pressure on the government.
Sure.
I know, like I tried with many MPs and I have a lot of connections when I work in this field. So every 25 votes you bring, they give you 1 minute for the NMP in the parliament.
Okay, so that's, I mean, I didn't know that, I kind of know that. Okay.
Yeah, I tried, like I spoke last month with 2 MPs.
Great, so you'd be a good resource.
One conservative and 2
What's your name? Are you on the list of WhatsApp or
no? No, I just...
Okay, no problem, no, because you would be a great resource, obviously, yeah, exactly, yeah.
I am a protection officer with UNHCR, the bad people.
There you go.
So I
no offense personally, it's just like lawyers. I don't take it personally when people say you're scummy lawyers, but I'm like, seriously, UNHCR, the salaries that they get paid and the billions of dollars that go into them, I think 10% makes it to the refugees, so I'm not, you know, anyway, so yeah.
What's my comment?
Yeah.
So, what's the mechanism of you? When you are now the leader of a group, let's say 5 or 50 or 100.
Okay, yeah.
Because
I don't think I want to be the leader, I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't want to be the leader, but...
legally.
Oh, legally, yes, sure. Yeah.
So, instead of going to the court each one, one group, but now the leader.
Right, so that could be an option. Yeah, that could be an option if it gets to
there. What's the mechanism of putting the pressure on the government? One media conference would not do anything.
You're right, and so you're right, but that's what I'm saying, you have to have a strategy. You're probably a great resource. I told you, I don't think I have all the answers. I'm just throwing stuff out there, right? It's like it's like a brainstorming, right? But I'm not saying I have all the answers. Yeah, I don't have all the answers at all. I mean, I'm just saying these are the kinds of things that even just as a Canadian, living and breathing the media stories, right? You know, I do watch media at night and, you know, whatever. I go on the Rebel media and whatever, right? I watch my Al Jazeera and CBC, which is garbage, but anyway, you know, I watch it because, right, I want to see their point of view, even if I don't agree. I'm like, CBC, okay, whatever, but yeah.
My point is,
so I don't have all the answers for that.
Is it to continuously put pressure on the government through media, through parliament,
right.
and this will do good.
Absolutely. No, that's what I meant. Social media, Twitter. I mean, not to sound, you almost want to be like, not like obsessive compulsive, right? Because you don't want to necessarily every day. And again, it depends on who you ask on how to do this, right? I'm not a media specialist. So I'm saying,
this is my point.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's what I'm saying. I could be part of it, but that's what I'm saying. I think somebody like you, and I'm just not, you know, Adham is good. I mean, Kuza, you know, is probably not, you know, pick on the younger people, right? But I'm feeling old these days. You know, if I have problems with my phone, I give it to my friend's 10-year-old who fixed my iPhone. I'm 44, right? I'm like, thanks. You know, they gave me the phone.
Because I know like a few hundred votes and we went to the parliament.
Yeah, so you're a good resource. I do not have the strategy.
Then
I
at
don't
the
have the
end,
plan.
they just vote, they give them 5 minutes.
Right,
6
right.
minutes. Like
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're not going to have 10 hours. They're not going to give you 10 hours.
But the next day they forget about it.
They do, and but that's what I'm saying. Like, then you just have to keep it up and keep it up and keep it up. I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. I'm not saying it's going to be like a fairy book story, right? But you sort of have to believe that you're doing a good thing, like anybody does, right? Like any political party, like any social justice, right? I mean, not to be, how long did it take for women to get the vote in Canada? We talk about Canada, and I mean, 100 years ago we didn't have the vote. It literally took years, so I'm not trying to move it away from what we're talking about, right? How long did it take for the civil rights, you hate to use the word black, black people, right? It didn't happen in a day. There's still problems. Look at what's going on in Ferguson and, Baltimore. You watch it, and I thought I was watching something from 30 years ago. My dad's like, did you watch CNN? I don't have TV anymore. It's on my, now let me Google it. And I didn't even know what was going on. I mean, as an example, you're right. If I choose to ignore it, I didn't even know what was going on in Baltimore. I'm embarrassed to say it because I had my own stuff going on. But when I needed to know, when my dad called me, right, I Googled it, and then I'm like, what's going on, right? But yeah, that took, that's still going on, the civil rights, if you want to believe. Some people spin on it, right? There's still a racial issue, and there seems to be, right? So yeah, I don't have a magical answer. I don't. Obviously,
no, it's not magical. Just throwing this on the board.
So I would want to be.
There should be people who organize.
Exactly. I would say I would want to be part of it, but I would not want to be the lead on that. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not an expert on media. I don't know, but I mean, something like Adam and you would be probably a good. Well, no, I'm just saying. I'm not putting because he's got his own family. Yeah, that's something that we can. And again, thank God for social media to some extent. We don't all have to get together physically because we all have, but we could say, you know what, 1 hour on Skype, let's get together on Skype or Google Hangouts and let's chat this out a bit. And again, there's no magical answer. I'm not saying you're saying it's magical because you've worked in, but like I said, if you do nothing, I'm not judging. I'm saying it's almost guaranteed that life will go on. And I mean, I don't want to sound right for anything else,
My interest is to sense your level of dedication to the issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes. So I've only done immigration.
Like we're not doing corporate law and
no, I'd be a lot richer.
Trying to help us with our.
No, I wouldn't be driving a 2007 Toyota Matrix if I did corporate law. Trust me, when my clients come and have better cars than I do, or better cell phones, my early clients, I just want to tell you, my early, refugee clients when the iPhone first came out, this is an iPhone 4 by the way, yes, not an iPhone 4S. Now, I don't really care because I'm not so
why are you being so cheap?
No, it's not about cheap. My issue is, my answer is it works.
It works.
That's the immigrant. Even though I'm here for 40 years, seriously, it goes to show how it's hard to leave your mother country back home.
Yes.
Why? Because I'm raised by immigrants.
Yeah,
I'm raised by
making money, every lawyer.
First of all, I'm not making as much as you think. Number two is, seriously, this is where I become my father. I've totally become my father. I would say, I talk to him every day. I'm very close to my dad. I mean, I love my mother too, but we're very close. And I say I become my father, right? Why? People ask me too. They're like, why don't you get a new phone? It's not that I can't really afford it.
You don't need one.
I'm like, it works. And my dad always says, it works. He has an old flip phone I gave him 9 years ago. And I said to him, Dad, I have enough FIDO dollars, I can get you like a newer flip phone. And his answer to me is seriously, he's like, it works, why do I need it? And I've become my father. I'm like, I catch myself saying the same thing, even though I'm raised here. My friend's like, why do you have an iPhone 4? And I'm like, because it works. I don't know, that's the only answer. It still works, right? Anyway, so no, I laugh when my clients would come to my office, refugee claimants, not judging them, refugee claimants. I had my own flip phone, Ericsson, Sony Ericsson, yes, anybody who's old enough to remember the Sony Ericsson flip phone. Like 12 years ago. And then they were having the new, type of iPhone thing, right? They would pull it out to enter my number, and I'm like, this is like a while ago, right? But I'm like, okay, I have a flip phone, you have like a fancy new phone. What's wrong with this picture? You're the refugee, I'm the refugee lawyer, right? So
it's a good chance to charge you $500 per hour.
Yeah, no, trust me, I wasn't making $500 an hour, and I don't make $500 an hour. Yeah, no, that's the wrong, that's Green and Spiegel. That's Green and Spiegel in downtown Toronto, so I mean, if people want to stay connected, I just want to maybe make an announcement, how are we trying to do this? I know there's too many ways, but WhatsApp, does everybody kind of know your number, or if if you want to, Because Adam is, I mean, that's one way if you use WhatsApp. I didn't bring any cards or anything, but I mean, Adam is a good, I mean, I think most of you probably have Adam's connection. I mean, my email or Gmail, I'm trying to not do 30 million ways. But yeah, we talked about maybe creating a Facebook page, and that's where I leave it up to you exactly, right? Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of how to leave it about, anybody that wants to go forward, I would say let's like take a little bit of a breather in the sense, whatever, like think about it. But I mean, you know, I can't talk tonight in the sense because I got to head back, and I'm actually heading back tonight on to Toronto, whatever. But we can connect, you know, the next few days, either Skype, Google, phone, WhatsApp, and then maybe figure out who can take a lead on certain parts in the sense, social media and connecting, and then the legal and exactly. Yeah, so now we got it out. But yeah, no, I want to thank everybody for coming. I know it's not enough time. I mean, I tried to answer general questions. I know there's so many others, but I don't actually have the problem yet. And I probably talk fast and I talk quickly. But I try to talk quickly to get it all in. But oh, sure, that would be good. If you do, it would be great. You know what? I gotta get back to that thing and happen. So I get 1 o'clock bus to Toronto. I travel like the refugee lawyer. I'm taking 1 o'clock bus. So yeah, so I have time. I'm I'm taking a 1 o'clock overnight bus. Because I have to get it's almost easier. Yeah, so I'm not in a rush. But yeah, I'm just saying like about my suitcase, like whatever. I think I'm gonna get a ride for quite a few pictures. So I mean, you don't have to wait for me. But yeah, because I'll probably head to there for 11. I'm saying, see, I'm the refugee lawyer. I'm taking the 1 o'clock bus out. Why? Because I don't want to spend $400 on a plane to Toronto on Porter. Because I'm too cheap. I am. You know what? I'm not. It's not that I'm cheap. I'd rather pay